Hey, welcome back to another week of our online class. Over the past couple weeks, we've been looking at kind of these tools that can help us while we read Scripture. When we usually talk about reading Scripture, we usually don't get into these background things that we've been talking about over the past couple weeks. A couple weeks ago, we talked about how in Matthew, there's a lot of use of the word prophecy, right? And we talked about how God keeps his promises. He made promises long ago, and he keeps them today. If you remember in our last class, we talked about the snow globe, right? How God has turned things on his head. How God has taken the story and flipped it and made it more beautiful. How Jesus spent time with sinners and not the saints. We talked about how God promises that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. This week, we're going to talk about what happens when we get confused with Scripture. So what do you do when you are confused with Scripture? Maybe you've been at church or reading on your own or at school and you come across a passage that you really don't know what it means. There's two things I always think of first when I get to that point in my life. One, I like to always ask someone who's wiser than me, someone who might have known the Bible longer than I have. The second thing is I have a study Bible that can help me answer those questions. It has footnotes that tell me history points or the definition of certain words or what it might mean. But what if you've done those things and you still are confused about a passage? You see, both of these ideas are perfectly good and can get you out of those moments where you're confused. But I want to introduce you to a new tool, a tool that you can add to your belt that you can use when you get into moments where you don't understand the Scripture. We call this tool translations. You see, the Bible wasn't originally written in English. It was actually written in 3 different languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. In order to get these versions into English, someone had to take it from the original language and translate it. That happened through a bunch of groups that translated it into English. And today we have a bunch of different English translations of Scripture. You might be asking yourself, why is this important? Why does it matter? Well, when these people translated the Scriptures, they used different philosophies on how to translate the Scriptures. So we have different translations like the NIV, the ESV, the Message, the King James, the New King James, the Hawaiian Pidgin version. All of these are using different words to convey the same meaning, right? If you've ever taken a different language at school, you know how this is. When there's something said in Spanish or French or Chinese, sometimes it's hard to say it in English. It's the same with Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. When we translate it from those languages, it might be a little bit different in English. So to wrap up, I'm going to give you kind of 3 pointers that can help you use translations when you get confused. The first thing I want to say is when you're reading Scripture, pick a translation in English that you're comfortable with. Some of us might like reading the ESV. Some might like reading the NIV. We think it's more poetic. Some love reading the KJV because they like how it sounds and that like the religiousness of it, right? Pick one that you're comfortable with. A way you can do that is look at your favorite passage or your favorite story or your favorite one verse and read it in a bunch of different translations. The second point I wanted to make is when you're confused, we can use the different translations to kind of help us understand the story. Here are a couple translations I have. I have the Common English Bible, the Holcomb Christian Standard Bible, the English Standard Version, the ESV, and the NIV. Let's look at my favorite verse in all of these different passages. Okay, so I have right here, I have the CEB, the Holcomb Christian Standard Bible, the ESV, and the NIV. The one that's most different is this Common English Bible. Enjoy the Lord. This is Psalm 37:4. Enjoy the Lord and he will give what your heart asks. I think that's an interesting translation. I'm going to read it in all the other verses and you can kind of tell me what you think. Psalm 37:4 in the Holcomb Christian Standard Bible. Take delight in the Lord and he will give you your heart's desires. It's very similar in the next two. The ESV, delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart and in the NIV. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. All just a little bit different in translation, except for this common English version. They're pretty much similar, almost the same. But this can help us understand Scripture just a little bit more. It might make the difference to help when you are confused. So my last point I wanted to make is that when we're reading different translations, it might help you if you're ever in a time where you're doing a communion thought, or you're leading a Bible study. Maybe you're teaching a class for younger kids, or maybe you're studying for a school test. One thing you can do if you have a certain passage in mind is to read it in different translations. That will help you gather as much information about this thing so that you can understand it to your best ability. Along with that, I think it's also important if you're ever teaching or doing a communion thought to read the scripture that you want to do your thought on, but read the couple before and the couple after. Maybe it's a couple chapters before and a couple chapters after, so you can understand the deeper context. I hope this idea of translations will be another tool for you that you can have in your belt. As you grow in life, as you read scripture on your own, these tools can be helpful for you in seasons of doubt or in seasons of growth. Remember, there are always people here to help you if you're ever confused or lost. While we don't promise that we'll have every question, an answer to every question, what we do promise is what Jesus promises, right? That if our trust and faith are in the right place, then we can ask and it will be given. We can seek and we will find, and we can knock and the door will be open to us. Thanks for joining us this week. Peace.